distributing meals at Parks facilities to St. Paul families with minor children. The goal here would be to provide and continue the service to be able to provide up to an estimated 1.9 million meals in 2021. Additionally, funding from this grant would allow for meal service for unsheltered populations in the city through a partnership with Involve Minnesota. The goal of that funding would be to cover 350 hot and 250 cold meals a day for a full year. And then also the grant would allow the city to expand our existing contract with Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services, or SMERLS, to be able to extend legal services to support residents who are facing COVID-related housing issues. And then lastly, as again, Deputy Director Guild noted, the internal costs associated with administering the grant and all of the programs that the grant funds. So that's the full list of funding allocations that the budget action that's in front of you this afternoon would make, for a total of just over $5 million. And we're happy to stand for any questions if you have them.
All right, thank you. And I think just putting into context in this, I think both of you have done this, but just to try-peat it, this is kind of the second round of CDBG CARES funding. We had the 26 million or so that we needed to spend and get out the door by the end of November. And so, like, recognizing that these are sort of funds that were allowed a little bit more flexibility and fit better under this type of funding, just to kind of explain why some things are here and some things were there, I think is worth noting as we look through this list. I did have a question. I see Ms. Naker has a hand up too, but I did have a question about timing on this. We had a very strict timer running on getting these out by November. Do we need to vote? I know we had to get these in and vote on them. Is the deadline this week for making these allocations, or what is the deadline with HUD? What are the parameters around that?
Council President Brenmoen, the HUD deadlines I would defer to Ms. Guild on, but I think some of our more pressing deadlines have to do with services that we have been providing with other resources that essentially ran out at the end of the year. And so to be able to continue to providing those services, most notably the expanded meal access and library career labs work, that without getting this additional funding, we'd run into challenges and service interruptions with those programs.
Great. So really the urgency is just continuity of the services in some of these cases. So I guess I was just trying to make a distinction between the last deadline we had that was very challenging to meet, and then why we're moving this forward here today. And it sounds like part of it is just driven by the need to continue services that we've used last year. Did you have something to add to that, Ms. Guild, or does that answer? Do you feel like that fully?
That was a perfect answer. Yes, continuity of service is driving the clock here.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks for the clarification, Ms. Naker.
Thanks, Council President, and thanks, Ms. Guild and Mr. McCarthy. I appreciate the thoughtfulness that's gone into this proposal. Originally, I had some concerns about how it seemed that we were taking a relatively large pot of money and breaking it up into many very small pots, and was wondering if those were too small to do enough good, or if we should be trying to put it all together and do more with it, kind of as Ms. Jalali suggested. But I've been convinced that due to the nature of the restrictions on these funds, and because we would be interrupting those critical services you were just talking about, that this is the right use. But it leaves me with a question specifically about those services, and specifically about things like expanded meal access. I wouldn't want to get into the position. It seems like we had funded those with the dollars we had. We knew that these were coming online, so we were able to repurpose them and use them to continue the program. But I am worried about getting into a situation where we come to the end of this funding and still have a need, and leaving families in the lurch at that point. So can you talk about what planning we're doing now in terms of how long this expanded meal access and other services are going to continue for, and how we're going to make sure that if we don't have a fresh round of something like a CDBG CV, we'll be able to keep that going?
I know Mr. Karsha Ramos from OFE is on the phone, who's been managing this program, and maybe I'll defer to him, who may be able to best answer that question.
Great. Council President Bredmo and Councilmember Naker, great question. So we've been in, so one, I'll say, how did OFE get hold of this work? Is that I'm running the food security sort of COVID response from the administration side. So what does that entail? It means deeply coordinating with our county and school partners to identify different food insecurity realities and what are the different strategies that we could collectively deploy to address that food insecurity. So been doing this, pretty much since May. And to your question around, I think it's sort of around what does it mean, like as we, if we were to get to the end of this, funding stream, what would be the different possibilities of what we're doing? What's making this possible, frankly, is that the federal government has a waiver, as a COVID waiver, to actually tap into the purchasing of food side of things. And this is for our particular, the schools take care of breakfast and lunch, and this is snack and meals. So this waiver, is extended, through 2021. And it would be at that point we would identify, what does, it actually look like for us to continue on with any type of meal service or not. And that's really sort of the critical path. Is sort of like the side of the funding equation that the pays for the food actually allow us to actually do these curbside pickups and those sort of things. So that's sort of a critical path that we're looking at. Not sure if there's sort of more there, but we're staying sort of attuned into, as students go back to schools, what are the different sort of realities that exist. And we're very much looking at this within sort of the crisis intervention mode, as we've seen, the super long lines, at these meal distributions as a result of, high unemployment and, reduced hours and those sort of things that is pushing sort of acute food insecurity across the city.
Thank you.
Were there other questions on this item? Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much for the report, Deputy Director Guild and Director McCarthy. We appreciate the information and appreciate the work and innovation it took to find the right place to spend these challenging federal dollars that make a really big impact. So we do appreciate that. I would entertain a motion from Ms. Jalali. Is there any discussion on that motion? And again, we're looking at version 2 in Legistar. Seeing none, roll call.
All right. Jalali, aye.
Ms. Moore, you're on mute.
Hey, Sherry, can you hear us? Should we roll call ourselves? Just kidding.
We may have to do a little improvising, but I'm just going to give Sherry just a second to get it together. Hi, Sherry. We can see and hear you now, or we can see you. We can't hear you. It's funny, there's like a long list of people on this call who are just, this is the vote they're waiting for. Ms. Moore, we can't hear you. Is it your headset?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I apologize, my controls all froze up. It wouldn't let me do anything. I'll just keep quiet and keep my microphone on the rest of the meeting. Jalali.
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Council President Brennan.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended. Item 17 has been withdrawn. And now we have a suspension item.
Yep. Ms. Naker, move suspension of the rules. Roll call.
Jalali,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Council President Brennan.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The rules are suspended. Resolution 21-192, amending the city's legislative agenda for the 2021 legislative session.
And this is something I'm bringing in under suspension. It's a timeliness issue. We voted on our legislative agenda last week, and the North End Community Center, which is something that I'm sure all of you know is a top priority for me, was errantly omitted from the first draft of this legislative agenda. It was the intention was to bring it in with the other nonprofit projects in a few weeks when we make our adjustments, but we are working to raise the profile of this project. It's so important for the community members who live in the North End, and it is incredibly shovel ready, and the opportunities that are in front of us with the new administration are now, and our legislators are meeting now. And I think some of you also know that we are working with the St. Paul Youth Commission to raise a profile of this project and give our Youth Commission the opportunity to see what it's like to lobby legislators and to share important projects like this with them. And so time was of the essence. So we just made a very small amendment adding the North End Community Center to the bonding priorities. Crossing our fingers, but knowing more than anything that creating this as a priority helps us make the case to our Congress people and the federal government that this is something that we really need to have happen in St. Paul. And the other thing I'll say is when you have a shovel-ready project with a bid behind it, the longer you wait to move forward, the higher the price tag goes. So we really do want to make sure this thing is moving forward. I will also remind my colleagues that the legislative agenda will be coming back for amendments again in a week or two. And that is an opportunity. I know that some of us have had things come in after we passed the legislative agenda, supporting changes to allow for tiny homes or supporting the other important projects. And so just making sure that that's in your mind for when we do make adjustments here in the weeks ahead of us. So I would move this resolution that simply adds a North End Community Center to the city's budget priorities. Is there discussion on that motion? Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. Thanks for bringing this forward. I will be speaking in favor of this. The North End is a community that has been lacking an opportunity. If you look at the type of challenges we have up there, from violent crimes to domestic violence, and a lot of young people up in the North End that needs these sort of opportunity. And when I speak of this, it's not just for North End folks. It's for all folks across the city, young people, family, to enjoy this this new facility. There's lots of business up there, different types of business, small mom and pop shop that can use the vitality, could use folks coming up there and doing business up there too. So I think this will be good for the North End, and if it's good for the North End, it's good for St. Paul. So I'll be speaking for this.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. Thank you so much. This is an area that we share as council members, and also 3 representatives share this very same area. It almost all comes together here. So sometimes the overlap is good, and sometimes that means you have more work to get people bought into a project. So hence the youth commissioners. Ms. Prince has a hand up.
Yes, I also want to speak in support of this because similarly, the issues that we've had on the east side with the needs of kids and families who are living on the edges. I can't think of a more important project to deal with some of the crises that we've had in our city, and I strongly support adding this to our bonding request.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We'll get this thing funded somehow, some way. I was talking to Ms. Prince earlier and saying we just need to find every resource we can to complete these important projects, and any way we can, I'm in. All right, I will take a motion then from Mr. Tao. Any final discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 18 is the final adoption of ordinance 20-29, amending chapter 409 of the legislative code pertaining to the distance restriction between liquor license locations to reduce the location radius for off-sale wine only licensed locations.
Ms. Prince.
Yes, I would like to lay this over until our March 24th meeting, with the hope that the Department of Safety and Inspections will be able to work with us on being able to provide a strong recommendation for the ordinance at that time. So I request a layover to March 24th.
All right, so there's been a layover requested. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is laid over to March 24th. Item 19 is first reading of ordinance 21-3, granting the application of NBH Holdings LLC to rezone the property at 1350 Arcade Street and 835 Clear Avenue from R1-4 one-family residential to T2 traditional neighborhood, and amending chapter 60 of the legislative code pertaining to the zoning map. This ordinance is laid over to February 3rd for second reading. Item number 20, resolution public hearing 21-6, approving the petition of Maureen Mikulski of Ryan Companies on behalf of Project Paul LLC and Presbyterian Homes and Services to vacate air rights of Mount Kerr Boulevard, abutting blocks 6 and 7 Ford plant.
And Mr. Tolbert, did you need a staff report on this item? No. All right, so we have held the public hearing online and over the phone, and so therefore Mr. Tolbert would move to close the public hearing and approve. This is not an ordinance, correct? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 21, resolution public hearing 21-12, approving adverse action against the cigarette tobacco license held by Amar Alfuria, doing business as Twins Market and Meat at 1055 4th Street East.
All right, and do we have a staff report on this item, I believe?
Yes, we do, Council President Brenmon.
Welcome, Ms. Scarda.
Thank you. Council President Brenmon, members of council, Teresa Scarda on behalf of the Department of Safety and Inspections. This is a request by the department for an upward departure and imposition of a $2,000 and 10-day suspension against the cigarette tobacco license held by Twins Market and Meat located at 1055 4th Street East. As to the first violation prior, on September 10th, 2020, the licensee received a notice of violation after an inspection uncovered a large number of flavored products at the licensed premises. The inspector that was at the scene discussed the violation with the licensee and instructed him to immediately remove the flavored products from the licensed premises. At that time, the department upwardly departed one box on the penalty matrix, asked for a $1,000 penalty. The licensee paid this penalty on September 25th, 2020. On October 8th, 2020, Inspector Voida from Department of Safety and Inspections returned to the licensed premises to perform a follow-up inspection. He asked the clerk if he could call the licensee and let him know that they were there for that follow-up inspection. They were unable to speak with the licensee, but the clerk did allow them to look behind the counter in order to conduct the inspection. Inspector Voida observed and photographed multiple flavored products behind the counter, cash register, and in the change bin. Inspector Voida documented his findings with photographs and his report. The department believes that the number of flavored products and the short amount of time between the first and second violations provide substantial and compelling reasons for the upward departure, and asks in the notice of violation gave the licensee the choices of admitting. The licensee's attorney responded to that notice of violation and indicated that the licensee was trying to sell the business, but that he would admit to the facts and discuss the penalty with the city council. So that is how this matter ended up before the council. I will tell the council that there is a new application at the Department of Safety Inspections. The department hasn't approved that new applicant and applications due to questions about the lease. They've reached out to the building owner, and I understand there's a meeting set to discuss those questions sometime in February. That's all I have.
Are there questions for Ms. Skarda? All right, does not appear that there's questions for Ms. Skarda. So on this item, the attorney is here to present on behalf of the business. And I believe Ms. Mormont has, maybe has that person on the line. I do notice that the 266 number that was on previously doesn't seem to be here anymore. Ms. Mormont?
Council President, we'll have him testify through a different connection. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
And I'll turn my volume up.
We can hear just fine.
Okay, there we go.
Council President, council members, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Jacob Steen with Hoffman Attorneys, and my address is 8300 Norman Center Drive. Staff we represent Mar Al-Farawi, the owner of Twins Market and Meat. And I do want to impress upon the council that my client does understand the severity of these violations. He does not dispute the facts as they're described, and he acknowledges the failures that have occurred on his watch. I do understand also that the upward departure and that the stance by licensing department is at least due in part to the violence that has occurred on the property, and I do want to address that. This has obviously been challenging, and it's been very challenging and frustrating for my client as well. The violence is unacceptable, and he has been working with the police to provide video and any assistance necessary. Now, even prior to this violation, as Ms. Skarda indicated, my client has been seeking to transition out of this location, and that is due to a lot of factors, but in part the ongoing violence in the vicinity, as well as just the challenges of operating a business successfully and keeping his head above water during this pandemic. Fortunately, we do have an agreement to sell the property to a new owner who has applied for a license. It was our hope that this would have occurred prior to this point, at which point my client would intend to surrender his license. And I understand that none of this is an excuse, but it is important context. Mr. Al-Farawi is a recent immigrant and a new citizen, and this is his livelihood. This business is important to him. That's how he supports his family and his children. And even a short suspension would be a fatal blow at this point, particularly during this pandemic, and it would imperil the sale of his business, which again is his livelihood. He does accept the mistakes and he's prepared to pay the fine, but again, the suspension would be fatal. So we're asking the City Council to stay this 10-day suspension for up to 6 months, or as soon as a new license can be issued. And as soon as that new license is issued, the business will transfer over to the new buyer, and at that point, my client would be willing to surrender his license. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there questions for the attorney? Okay. And it seems like we're struggling a little bit with technology today, but I was able to hear the testimony plain as a bell, so hopefully folks were as well. Ms. Prince.
Yeah, and Ms. Skarda, please correct me if I'm wrong here. Mr. Steen, I appreciate that you're here. I appreciate that there is finally a recognition of the severity of the violations. And I want to tell you that the $2,000 fine and the 10-day suspension have nothing to do with the gun violence on the premises. And if that were part of this, I would have been seeking a revocation of the license today. So I need you to know that Mr. Al-Tarawi should be a neighbor of this business. He has robbed the residential neighbors of the quiet enjoyment of that neighborhood. And I can't, my colleagues have an opportunity to weigh in here, but I am inclined to move the recommendation of the city attorney here because the cigarette violations alone, the first violation happened, and when the city went in to see if your client had complied, not only had he not complied, but the sense that I got was he actually stocked up on the product. I mean, this is really, really unacceptable. And so, but I do want you to understand that we were not able to consider the gun violence as part of this licensing action. And for that reason, I feel on the basis of the cigarette violations alone, the tobacco violations alone, that Mr. Al-Tarawi has more than earned the matrix penalty and the 10-day suspension.
Thank you, Ms. Prince.
So that is my recommendation.
So the recommendation of the city attorney's office.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Prince. Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Council President. Just wanted to speak in support of that motion, Councilmember Prince. I think that makes a lot of sense. I know that you in particular are often extremely understanding and thoughtful about these decisions and often willing to grant additional chances to property owners who are genuinely trying to do the right thing or who are, it's a first-time violation. But looking at the record here, this is not a first-time violation. This is a second violation within or multiple violations within a very short period of time. And I couldn't agree more. It doesn't seem like our laws are being taken seriously here. So while I appreciate the words, I think the action of complying is more important. And so I'll support you on that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Naker. And I appreciate Ms. Prince's acknowledgement as well that there is more going on here than what we're able to look at when it comes to making these decisions. And I would just like to say I'm fully in support of the motion that's in front of us, and also just putting it out there to my colleagues that we run into this challenge with businesses and malfeasance that takes place, feet outside of their door that, somehow can't be contemplated in these decision-making settings. And we know there's some that will be coming in front of us that are in the North End. And I feel like we have more of a challenge with this for some reason than some of our neighboring suburbs. And I'd really like to understand how we can find easier ways to connect the dots. If some things are happening in the parking lot of a business and the businesses on both sides of them are closed, it seems fairly clear to me where the problem is emanating, or that the problem has been allowed to emanate because the business owner's actions are inaction. So recognizing that is not what we're voting on today, but also to share with my colleagues, and I see people nodding, that we need to figure out a way to streamline and connect what's going on outside the building, which we know is connected to what's going on inside the building, for future discussion. So I just want to kind of put a reminder in that. Ms. Yang.
Thank you. Councilmember Prince, I will also be joining you in supporting the recommendation. I just wanted to point out it was really reassuring seeing emails from the Association for Non-Smokers and also constituents, organizers who worked on creating the ordinance. I feel like we have a really strong ordinance that really pushes on accountability and enforcement for situations like this. And this is a way for us to have integrity to the things that we've passed and make sure we're really building toward the type of community that folks in our community do deserve. And so I will be joining you in supporting this.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. All right, there has been a motion and it looks like there's no further discussion, so we'll go to roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 22, AHPC 21-2, considering the appeal of Carlos Perez Sketches LLC on behalf of Sullivan Property Investments 2 LLC to the Heritage Preservation Commission decision of 540 Portland Avenue in the Historic Hill Heritage Preservation District.
And I believe we're starting this one with a staff report from the HPC.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Council President Brenmoen and Councilmember Tao. My name is Allison Suhan-Eggers. I'm a senior historic preservation planner in PED. And Councilmember Tao just asked me to kind of go through the timeline of this project. I know you all have seen this before, so just a rundown of kind of the history and where we're at up to this point today. So in fall of 2019, the applicant met with HP staff, specifically myself, on site to talk about a potential project. On February 10th of 2020, the HPC did a pre-application review. Pre-applications are for feedback on a possible proposal. There's no decisions that are made for pre-applications. The applicant came in with 2 options, and the HPC recommended that the project have a covered porch on the rear facade to better relate to the architectural rhythm of Summit Avenue. And some of the commission feedback that was noted in the adopted minutes was that it was a very sensitive design. The porch design is preferred and that it's an elegant solution to a difficult site. Between February and August, we dealt with COVID-19 and the applicant began working on an application proposal, and that Proposal was received on August 29th. The HPC application for 540 Portland Avenue for a 3-unit residential structure, and it was scheduled for the September 21st HPC meeting. On September 12th, neighbors notified HP staff that they didn't know about the project and they requested to meet with the applicant. And so on September 14th, the HP staff notified the applicant about the neighbor's request for a meeting, and the applicant agreed to postpone their HPC meeting to the October 5th public hearing so that they would have time to meet with the neighbors. On September 22nd, the applicant met with 18 neighbors, and HP staff George Gauze was also in attendance. They also met with them on the 26th. And on September 27th, the applicant sent revisions to the design based on the discussion with neighbors, and the changes were explained in the application submittal. On October 5th, the public hearing for the proposal was at the HPC, and from the adopted minutes of the October 5th meeting, the commissioners commended the thoroughness of the applicant's submission, and commissioners acknowledged and appreciated neighbors' concerns, but noted that the project meets all the criteria that they are charged with addressing. And the HPC approved it 5-0. On October 19th, an appeal of the HPC approval was filed by William Gar Hargens and Mary Missy Staples Thompson. And on November 18th, the appeal was heard at the City Council meeting and was laid over to December 2nd. On December 2nd, the appeal was heard at City Council and it was laid over to December 16th and remanded for a rehearing of testimony at the HPC. And so on December 14th, the HPC reheard 540 Portland. And at that meeting, there was a motion to approve the application, but it was denied 2-5, and a motion to deny the project with a statement with the intent of the denial stating that the intent of denial is not to deny the project, but to get the developer and the neighborhood together, and recommended that the applicant communicate with the neighborhood on any revision of the project, and that was passed 5-2. So on December 16th, the appeal was withdrawn by Councilmember Tao at the City Council meeting since the project was denied at the rehearing. And on December 23rd, the neighbors emailed the applicant requesting to schedule a meeting. And on December 28th, an appeal of the HPC's denial was received from Carlos Perez. And on December 30th, Carlos Perez responded to the neighbors' request for a meeting and asked that meetings be sponsored by HPC staff to make sure meeting minutes are recorded properly and they could be used for the commission's review. And he ensured that they would be notified of any future meetings and that any neighbors that submitted letters of opposition would be heard as well. HPC staff wouldn't have scheduled meetings between the applicant and the neighbors until after the appeal period had passed anyways. In this case, it would have been after the holidays to ensure more participation. So we would have been right around this time anyways. And here we are today hearing the appeal of the denial of the project by HPC. That's all.
All right. Thank you so much for that thorough report. I appreciate it. And I do want to note, I introduced you as HPC, not HP staff. I think it's just habitual. So thank you, Ms. Suhan Eggers, for your report. I appreciate it very much. We're going to see if there's any questions for you, and then we'll go on to other discussion. Ms. Prince has a hand up.
My question, Ms. Suhan Eggers, is in reading the HPC minutes for December 14th, you know, as you said, the original vote was 2-5. The motion was in support of the project, and it went down on a 2-5 vote. So it was a negative. So you had to vote it again at that point to have a motion that on whether the permit was being issued, because it was just a negative vote for moving the permit forward. So it was a 2-5 vote that lost to provide the permit. And then you had to redo the vote so that it was a 5-2 vote against issuing a permit. Is that right?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, yes, it is a little complicated, but the first motion was a motion to approve the project, right, and that was voted 2-5, and so the motion did not pass. And so then a new motion was made to deny the project, so that then cooperation between the neighbors and the applicant could continue. And that was voted 5-2. And so that was the motion that passed for this item.
I mean, I have an issue with that interpretation of the 5-2 vote. The 5-2 vote, the motion was made against issuing the permit. And then Ms. Bazat asked for a friendly amendment that the developer meet with the neighborhood, but it was a denial of the permit. And then it was Mr. Gause, I believe, who stated, this isn't a denial, it's just more time. It's just asking the applicant to meet with the neighbors. But it was, the permit was voted down on a 2-5 vote. So the 5-2 vote, it makes no sense that that would just be a vote to have the applicant work with the neighbors, because it was creating a record to deny the permit. So I really take issue with the interpretation that this was not a denial of the permit. And I also don't understand why there were no findings with that action by the HPC.
Ms. Suhan Eggers or anyone else who, Mr. Tao, did you have something to add? Are we just waiting? Okay. Is there an answer to, I don't know if there's an answer to the question, if that's an observation. I'm looking to staff. I'm looking for someone to jump in the fray.
Sure. So Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, I see your concerns there. The motion that was put out for the HPC to vote on, as it was proposed by the commissioner, I believe it was Commissioner Wagner that proposed it. He was the one that stated the intent of the denial motion, and there were no findings issued with that motion to be adopted, hence why there aren't any in that resolution.
Well, and I also want to point out there are no findings. There's no record of error that includes findings in the appellant's appeal. So we are being asked today to vote on an appeal that does not provide any error by the commission. It takes issue with we shouldn't have to meet again, or why did we even have this meeting? But an HPC appeal should have findings in it, and there aren't any. So I don't know that we're going to get an answer on this, but I just need to point out that in every way that this process could be convoluted, it is.
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, we did review the appeal that was submitted, as well as our city attorney also reviewed it before it went before you. And the way that it was read was that the error in the argument for the error of the HPC was that the recommendation of meeting with the neighbors that had already been met, and it was not considered in the HPC decision, in that the applicant had already been meeting with the neighbors. That was how we read the error in the decision.
Well, I just will also say that the 2-5 vote failing there was a motion to grant the permit, and it lost on a 2-5 vote. So there was no permit for the second vote. It was just supposed to be turning the first vote around so that it resulted in action that the HPC could act on. So I want to point that out. And I also want to say, you mentioned that the Ramsey Hill Association and SARPA had reached out to the developer after December 14th. And that the developer had said, you know, he would like to have if there was a meeting, it should be with HPC staff. And did that meeting ever occur?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Prince, it did not, because the request was made during the active appeal timeline. We normally don't take action like that during an open appeal period. We wait for that appeal period to close. And since the applicant submitted an appeal within the appeal deadline, there hasn't been a meeting time proposed.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Council President. Sorry, I'm just trying to follow the thread of these documents, which are extremely convoluted. So I just want to make sure I understand. Ms. Zuhan Eggers, based on your timeline, is it accurate to say that since the HPC denial or failure to approve of the original application and the request for the developer to meet with neighbors, no meetings with neighbors have since taken place?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Naker, yes, that is correct. We have not scheduled a meeting with the neighbors because there was an open appeal that was filed within the deadline to file an appeal. And so we're waiting on this to settle before we continue with any sort of meetings between the neighbors and the applicant.
And there was, as a follow-up, Council President, there was an understanding that the only way that meetings with neighbors could take place would be for HPC staff to schedule those meetings, that the developer couldn't reach out to neighbors without HP staff intervention. I'm just trying to understand the process.
Sure, Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Naker. So the rationale for that was because since it was a recommendation by the HPC that there needed to be HP staff involved in those meetings to ensure that we could have minutes recorded and be able to share that with the commissioners at a future meeting if the applicant chose to continue moving forward with the project. Because since it was essentially a condition on moving forward, the applicant felt more comfortable that the HP staff be involved. And we had offered that as well in the previous portions of this timeline too, to be available for meetings and helping ensure that anything that was being discussed around the design was still meeting the guidelines of the district, so as not to have any unnecessary work be done to a project that then wouldn't be supported by the HPC. The project as is right now still meets the guidelines. And so having HP staff at those meetings would help ensure that any changes could still meet the guidelines.
Okay, and I think my last clarifying question, Council President, is just, so it looks like, as you said earlier, the appellant is citing an error in fact by saying that the HPC claimed that there hadn't been any engagement with the neighborhood to date, and that was the error in fact when there had been engagement. But it seems to me that wasn't a past finding, that was a prescription for action to come, that they were asking for engagement in the future rather than saying there hadn't been any to date. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that the claim on which the appeal is based?
Council President Brenmo and Councilmember Naker. So the appeal is stating that the previous meetings and the previous changes that the applicant had made with because of the meetings with the neighbors and had made the changes in a result of those conversations, that hadn't been considered in the discussion of including neighborhood input, and that the other part of the argument of the appeal is that there were no findings in regards to how the project doesn't meet the guidelines that the project has to adhere to for the HPC.
All right, thank you, Ms. Naker. I see Ms. Prince has a hand up again. Ms. Prince?
Yeah. I'm sorry to belabor this, but the record is terrible here. After Ms. Bazat's motion failed to approve the application, then the commission returned to the unfinished action at 540 Portland. They had started on the next item on their agenda. Commissioner Wagner, I'm reading directly from the minutes. Commissioner Wagner moved to deny the 540 Portland Avenue application. Commissioner McDonald seconded the motion. Commissioner Bazat, who had lost the previous motion, recommends a friendly amendment that the applicant communicate with the neighborhood on any revision of the project. Now, if they were denying the permit, then I'm not sure how that was a friendly amendment, but the motion was to deny the 540 Portland Avenue application. And then the motion passed on a 5-2 vote. So regardless of whatever the friendly amendment was, the motion was to deny the 540 Portland Avenue application. And then no findings were made. So, I mean, we've got a problem here. I mean, the council will do its business, but I think this is a serious problem with our process, that no findings were made in denying the application. And now we have an appeal before us that basically is an argument over a friendly amendment.
Ms. Jalali.
My question is, so based on all understanding today, from a legal standpoint, because there's been like so many different, well, there's just been actions back and forth and then it's an appeal. So I always get confused by the sort of double negative language. I just simply want clarification procedurally on what our vote is, specifically ruling today. And then if you vote no, what happens if you vote yes? Is it possible to just get a CAO clarification?
Well, can I, before we do that, there's not a motion. Okay. And I just want, there's a little bit of a challenging question, because if we move to appeal or move to deny, it would be, I don't want you to get misinformation on how.
That makes sense.
So can we get to that motion and then get a clarification on your question, Ms. Jalali? Is that okay?
All good.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Thanks.
Okay. No, it's these, I appreciate the clarification. These can get, especially with a long conversation, they can get muddied. Let's move to Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. And also thank you for your report here. I appreciate all the inputs, and especially from Councilmember Prince, but I'm going to be voting to grant the appeal. I think that the HPC had erred when it denied the applicant's request to construct a 3-unit residential construction at 540 Portland Avenue, and recommended that the applicant communicate with the neighbors on any revision of the project. The HPC made no other finding with respect to this denial. Section 73.06 does not require an applicant to meet with neighbors for approval of a permit to build new construction. Regardless, the developer communicated with the neighbors multiple times and made a thorough effort to listen to the neighbors' concern and revise its application based on those discussions. 4, I'm granting the developer's appeal for 3 reasons. First, the developer's project confirms with the HPC standard outlined in Section 7.65 of the St. Paul Legislative Code. The massing, volume, height, and scale of the project are in harmony with existing adjacent structures, and therefore the project does not materially impair the architectural and historic value of buildings on the adjacent property within the Historic Hill District as set forth in the HPC staff recommendation for this project, which was also adopted by a unanimous vote of the HPC on October 5th, 2020. Second, the developer's project satisfies Section 73.06I(3) of the St. Paul Legislative Code. The proposed new construction will not materially impair the architectural and historic value of building on adjacent site or in the immediate vicinity within the Historic Hill District. And the application considered by the HPC on December 14, 2020 was identical to the application considered by the HPC on October 5, 2020, an application which HPC had committed for its thoroughness. Third, the developer's project meets the city's comprehensive goal of promoting density while maintaining the integrity of the Historic Hill District. With that, I yield.
All right, so your motion will be to approve the appeal, accept the appeal. Okay. All right, so that is our motion, and based on the analysis Mr. Tao just shared. Is there further discussion on that motion? And is this the point where, and I see Mr. Gause has a hand up. Is this the point where we can clarify to Mr. Lally and all of us what we're voting on? And then I see Mr. Gause has a hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things that were said. First of all, during the motion at the HPC, we had technical difficulties. Commissioner Wagner was very worried because we had two commissioners, Commissioner Nelson and Commissioner McDonald, could not be heard. And it took several tries to get Commissioner McDonald to be heard in the meeting. So that's why kind of this went around, and there were those two different votes. And second, the comment about the intent of the denial is not to deny the project, but to get the developer and the neighborhood together. That is Commissioner Wagner's comment. That's not coming from staff. So I wanted to clarify a couple of those things. We were clear. So
thank you. And
hello, this is Kate Daly, Assistant City Attorney, Council President Bren Moen, Council Member Jalali. I'd like to clarify what you are voting on here. This is a vote to grant or deny the appeal of the developer. So the HPC denied the developer's application. So as Council Member Tao just noted on the record, he has moved to grant the developer's appeal so that the development can move forward.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
So Mr. Tao has moved to grant the appeal. Is there discussion on that motion? Ms. Prince, and then, I'm sorry, Ms. Naker.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Me first? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Council President. Thanks, Councilmember Tao, and I plan to support that motion. But I do want to go back to Councilmember Prince's point. I am failing to find findings anywhere in the HPC resolution or in the minutes, and it does make it very difficult. And so for that reason, I plan to support the appeal, partly because I think it's irregular to not have those findings on which an appeal can be based, and to be basing an appeal only on that sort of friendly amendment. But I guess wanted to just check with Mr. Goss to make sure that were there findings that aren't being listed here that caused the HPC to deny the appeal or deny the application in the first place?
Well, our Council President and Council Member Naker, our original motion was, staff recommendation was for approval of this project. And then even staff was kind of taken that the commission went the way for denial. So I guess we did not actually end up writing findings for denial. So.
Okay, Ms. Prince. Ms. Daly, your hand is up. Do you have something to add?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay, I assumed it was lingering, but you just never.
You know what? I didn't lower my hand. Excuse me.
All right, now you did. Sounds good, Ms. Prince.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. I think it's a tough one. My concern about historic preservation is the reason I'm taking a really strong position today on this, because what is before us today is not a dispute about whether or not there be 3 units or density in the historic district. Nobody on either side of this was opposed to putting a 3-unit dwelling in a separate building on that lot. So just to be clear about that, the dispute is about the design. I think at one point I read somewhere that there was a concern about creating inaccurate architectural history on Summit Avenue and in the Hill District. What I think is really regrettable about the fact that SARPA and the Summit Avenue Residential Preservation Association and the Ramsey Hill Association were unable to work with the developer was that their aim was to create something that would be a structure that would make sense within the Hill District. And I believe from what I have read that it was never an issue about density. The plan may have been reached through an effort that could even create a replicable carriage house design, multi-unit design approach that other property owners in the Hill District could use to also create density within this community. I'm speaking against the motion for a number of the questions I raised. The applicant's appeal cites no findings on which to grant the appeal. The appellant identifies no error of the HPC other than a disagreement that he shouldn't be required to meet with neighbors again. I read the minutes to say that the HPC commissioner, Mr. Wagner, who made the motion, said he moved denial of the application. His comments after that, the denial of the application passed on a 5-2 vote. The recommendation to, and I also believe that I think it's really unfortunate that the developer was unwilling, as I've said already, to meet with the 2 historic district representatives. Finally, I just want to say in the record that there is a shared easement in this matter, and nothing in the council's action today grants a property right to the developer. The adjoining neighbors have objected to this project on the basis of that driveway easement, and that remains to be resolved by the private parties.
All right, and there's a motion to grant the appeal in front of us. I'm looking, Mr. Tao has a hand up. Mr. Tao? You're muted.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I just want to call the question, and so ready to vote.
All right, there's a motion. And roll call.
Jalali?
Yes.
Naker?
Aye.
Prince?
No.
Tao?
Aye.
Tolbert?
Yes.
Yang?
Aye.
Council President Brenmon?
Aye.
6 in favor, 1 opposed, being Councilmember Prince. The public hearing is closed and the motion of intent is the appeal is granted.
Ms. Moore, before we're moving on to the legislative hearing consent agenda, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm apologies to my colleagues, but I'm going to need to step off this call. And so I'm going to hand over the gavel, the virtual gavel, to Ms. Naker. Sorry to do this abruptly, but I do have to step off.
The legislative hearing officer recommends adoption of the following resolutions as no objections to these recommendations were received. Item 23, RLHTA 21-25, 1000 Arcade Street. Item 24, RLHTA 20-630, 1779 Arlington Avenue East. Item 25, RLH VBR 21-3, 767 4th Street East. Item 27, RLH TA 20-657, 1862 Ivy Avenue East. Item 28, RLH SAO 21-1, 1356 Jefferson Avenue. Item 30, RLH RR 20-56, 174 Page Street West. Item 31, RLH VO 21-1, 857 and 859 Payne. Item 32, RLH RR 21-7, 489 Sherburne Avenue. Item 34, RLH TA 20-661, 1734 Sims Avenue. Item 35, RLH RR 21-3, 2022 Stillwater Avenue. Item 37, RLH TA 20-642, 1831 University Avenue West. Item 39, RLH RR 21-8, 1143 Woodbridge Street. Item 40, RLH AR 20-151, collection of vacant building registration fees. Item 42, RLH AR 20-153, collection of fire certificate of occupancy fees. Item 43, RLH AR 20-154, excessive use of inspection or abatement services fees. And again, the motion is to adopt these items.
Great, thank you. So moved by Councilmember Tolbert. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
6 in favor, none opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following items, no objection to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendation was received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoption. Item 38, RLH TA 20-634, 1040 Western Avenue North. Item 41, RLH AR 20-152, securing and/or emergency building services. And item 44, RLH AR 20-155, graffiti removal. And again, the motion is to amend and adopt.
So moved by Ms. Yang. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, none opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolutions are adopted as amended. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to continue the public hearing to February 10th. Item 26, RLH TA 20-631, 959 Hudson Road. And the motion is to continue the public hearing to February 10th.
So moved by Ms. Prince. Is there any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to February 10th. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested, and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. Item 29, RLHTA 20-681, 736 Oakland Avenue. And we do have a staff report.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Mormon.
Welcome. Oakdale Avenue, just for the record, what we're looking at for this particular property is a vacant building fee. The fee covers the time period of July of 2020 through July of 2021. This particular property is a commercial structure. It has been empty for about 4 years. It was being informally monitored by fire inspection staff, and eventually it was referred to the vacant building program in 2019. The owners indicated in their statement to you that they're contesting the vacant building assessment, and they're in the process of repairing the building to operate their business and or sell it. They say they're regularly, that it has heat and electric, and they try to maintain it in good condition. Because they aren't able to generate income right now, that the building is still empty and not put to full use, I am recommending that the assessment be made payable over a period of 5 years so that the income coming in from the building would match more closely with what the payment period would be for the assessment. There have been 6 summary abatement orders for this property since it went into the vacant building program in 2019. So it has required some orders from the city for its ongoing maintenance.
Great.
My recommendation is approval.
Thank you, Ms. Mormont. Is there any discussion of that motion? And I'll be supporting that motion, moving to support the legislative hearing officer's recommendation. I appreciate the appellant's point that they are in the process of getting the building ready for sale and renovating it, but in the meantime, it is a vacant building and it has required, as Ms. Mormon mentioned, several abatement orders. So that's why we have the vacant building program, and I appreciate your suggestion, Ms. Mormon, to spread those payments out over 5 years. So I move approval. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. Item 36, RLHTA 20-643, 1352 Summit Avenue, and we do have a staff report.
Welcome, Ms. Mormont.
Vice President Naker, this particular vacant building fee covers the time period of January of 2020 through January of 2021. So the year actually just concluded today for the vacant building fee. This went into the vacant building program as a result of a major fire, and the property was condemned as unfit for human habitation. The code provides that in cases of fire, the vacant building fee is automatically waived for a period of 90 days. Staff also provided a second waiver of the vacant building fee so that if the work would have been done within 6 months of going into the program, there would have been no fee. At this point, when we discussed the matter in early January in legislative hearing, the owner indicated that he anticipated being done within 3 or 4 months. So there is no question but that he would be in the vacant building program for the entire period. He does note in his letter to the council a few things, and it's been in there for a day or two. He notes that it was a fire. He notes here that he supports the need for the program, that he feels like this is a financial hardship for him to pay for this, and that he does pay property taxes already on this property. Again, my recommendation is to make this payable over a period of 5 years. And I would note for the record also that this is a case where there was a significant fire, and so insurance is obviously in play in this. And insurance often covers these vacant building fees that result as from a fire damaging the structure. He indicated in the hearing the owner that he had trouble convincing his insurance company that this was a legitimate bill, and staff did volunteer to work with the insurance company to clarify the city's expectations and provide all documentation that they might need. That offer wasn't accepted. So.
Thank you, Ms. Mormon. Any questions for Ms. Mormon? Okay. Mr. Tolbert?
Yeah, I want to thank Ms. Mormon for all of her work on this. She always does go the extra mile and really works with folks. I think in this case, after reviewing the file and knowing the multi-year history on this, I'm going to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the hearing officer.
Okay. Motion is to approve. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tolbert. Oops, I'm sorry, I forgot Councilmember Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. One last item. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is contested and additional testimony from the appellant is in the record. Item 33, RLH TA 20-707, 716 Sims Avenue. And we have a staff report.
Ms. Mormon.
Vice President Naker, the testimony that was added to the record was added after the beginning of the council meeting. You can see it there. It's also very brief, and I can put it in the record in just a moment. What this is another vacant building fee. This particular fee covers the same time period, January through January, so the year is completed for which the bill applies. The council actually waived this vacant building fee through March of 2020, so that there was a 90-day waiver already on this. And they were also given the opportunity to get out of the vacant building program and get the C of O reinstated without being a Category 2. Mr. J. Mitchell, on behalf of Quality Residences, LLC, is indicating that he thought that the plumbing work, which was the key thing, had been done. Indeed, it had not been done, and he did not understand that the plumbing contractor pulled a permit but then withdrew it and got a refund for it. So the new plumbing permit wasn't pulled until just 3 weeks ago to get the work done. So this conversation has been going on for a year now. The condemnation occurred in December of 19. So kind of a long-term thing. They're anticipating they're going to be able to get their fire certificate of occupancy reinstated in a couple of months. Again, that may qualify it ably for a waiver for the next vacant building fee, but I would recommend approval of this fee for Quality Residences.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Mormon. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none. Ms. Yang?
If I may, Ms. Naker, I'm terribly sorry. I did say that I would say what the appeal statement was, and I neglected to put that on the record. If you could indulge me, he says this unit will be complete by 4/1 of 21. Due to current pandemic, it's been difficult to complete the renovation due to nationwide shortage of material, contractor scheduling, material shipping delays, etc. So that is what his statement was in the record, and that he would like it waived for those reasons.
Thanks, Ms. Mormon. And just to clarify, this vacant building fee is for the year that has just passed, January 20 to January 21. If it were to be completed in April of 21, as he is stating it will be, then we would be prorating the vacant building fee for the January 21 to 22, I assume.
Prorating, or if it's done very quickly, it could even be waived entirely. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Mormon. Ms. Yang, sorry to cut you off there.
That's okay. Thank you. I did read the information with this. I'll be taking the legislative officer's recommendation.
Great. So there is a motion to approve the legislative hearing officer's recommendation. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Jalali.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Vice President Naker.
Aye.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. That is it.
And that does bring us to the end of our agenda. Great. Is there, I know it's been a while, a longer meeting than normal, but any good news from the wards before we go? Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. I'll go first because mine isn't so much news from the wards, but an update that I talked with Council President Brenmoen about making sure folks had. I've been in contact with, I believe, and I know all of you to this point about our shared priority of moving an RFP and or an application to be able to help community partners access our top funds this year, which are $100,000 in funds that our city council has access to. And we've all been in discussion about being able to advance a fair and transparent process that has clear review, is equally accessible and public, and also has other important supports like translation and assistance if there are community partners who'd like to access the application or need help figuring it out. So our office has been working closely with the council president's office and then doing our best to check in with all of you and incorporate your feedback into that effort. So I just wanted to give a quick update while I have all of us here today that we are very close to being able to get an application online and being able to announce the opportunity. The rough timeline is my hard commitment and that we are working very hard to honor is by the end of this month. So a January release date. We have the application out, so very soon in the next few days, that then it will then undergo a time period of approximately 2 weeks that people can apply with assistance and help from staff that we've worked to build out. That it'll then undergo, applications will get reviewed by a staff committee that we're close to finalizing building out, including our current Community First public safety partners who implement the programs that are part of our existing city strategy. And that then once that review is done, a set of recommended proposals would get advanced to our council for a vote. So that's the rough timeline. And we hope that by end of January, very soon, we'll be able to share the application with offices and the community. And that by the end of February, we've gone through the cycle of folks getting time to apply, staff getting time to review, council offices getting time to sign off. So it's been a blitz of work in a short period of time. And I have made an effort to stay in communication with all of you. But as we approach the go date, I wanted to just make sure we could share that here. And I'm just tremendously thankful for office's feedback. I have read all of the emails that council members have shared and then talked to y'all on the phone and just texted and really trying to incorporate and reflect the ideas that we've gotten and make sure this honors our intention and our priorities of a transparent process that is accessible to folks. So I am hoping this is coming as a good update to you all and not cold news. And I just wanted to make sure I could speak to that. Please let me know if you want to chat about it anytime. This is all that I'm working on. And I think about COP way too much. And I also would just say as a final thing that toward that point, the historical acronym for these funds, as you all know, is COPP or COP, Community Organizing Partnership Program. And this is like an awkward acronym and it's just sort of not clear what it is. And so it is our COP funds that will be used, but we've attempted to change the name of the application opportunity to something friendlier, the Community First Public Safety Council Fund, which we felt was just a better explanation of what it is. It doesn't have a cool acronym still. It's just CFPS. So we'll get there. But yeah, you might hear me start calling it the CFPS Fund. And that is the same thing. It's COP, just pushing myself to use an acronym that makes more sense to the broader community or just talk about what we mean for it to be. So that's the update on the work that's been happening and that you've all been part of. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Councilmember Jalali, and appreciate your leadership on this. And it's a good reminder to me to get my feedback on the RFP, which I pledged to do ASAP. So I will do that. Thank you. Hopefully will be good news for all of the wards. So thank you for that. Ms. Prince.
Thank you, and thanks, Ms. Jalali, for that update. That is very exciting. I have a couple of things. One is from the ward that this coming Saturday, January 30th, from 10 to 1 p.m., Sunray Library is going to be hosting a family snowshoe stroll with a snowshoe story stroll. It'll feature a story about the Dakota people in winter. It will be on snowshoes and they will be provided, but you do have to register by calling Sunray or looking them up online. And this event is created through a partnership of the libraries, Lower Phelan Creek Project, St. Paul Parks and Rec, and the Capital Region Watershed District. So it really will be a very special event. The other thing I want to call our attention to is the Friends of the Libraries are now running this fireside reading series, Cozy Conversations with Minnesota Authors, on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock. Tonight's author in there on Zoom, so you go to the thefriends.org/fireside. And tonight's author is Lynn Enger, who will be talking about his novel, American Gospel. And then next Wednesday, February 3rd, the author will be Yelena Bailey, who will be discussing her nonfiction book called How the Streets Were Made, Housing Segregation and Black Life in America. So I really encourage people to go to the Friends website and find out more about upcoming authors in the series, but this is a really nice free opportunity via Zoom. And that is it.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Great updates. I especially love the idea of the family snowshoeing. I might take you up on that. Ms. Yang. Ms. Yang, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to share news on behalf of the Ward 5 office. It's activities that folks from our ward and everyone can participate in as well. Through Right Track in support of our amazing rec leader, Courtney Morris at McDonough, the City of St. Paul has released a series of girl-centered and lead exercise videos that celebrate women and girls in sports. You can work out with awesome female athletes from St. Paul like Evelyn, Zoe, Gal, Amelia, and Ray. They cover softball, football, soccer, warm-ups, and cool-downs. They build on foundational sports skills and have fun. You can check this out on the city's YouTube page or head over to the Ward 5 Facebook page.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of those great updates, and thanks for a great meeting. If there's nothing else to come before us tonight, we are adjourned. Take care.